Now, the human brain is particularly susceptible to the environment because most of our development of the brain occurs after birth and not before. 80% in the growth of the brain happens after birth, and 90% of the circuits in the brain develop after birth and not before. Unlike the horse, for example. The horse can run on the first day of life. Human beings can't muster that much neurological development, muscle balance, control, visual acuity for a year and a half, 2 years. The horse is 24 months ahead of us or 18 months ahead of us in terms of brain development. Why is that? Simple evolutionary logic. What makes us human beings, in fact, is the size of our prefrontal circuits, our cortex, the neocortex. And so we evolved as human beings as our brains began to get larger. And our brains began to get larger precisely because our ancestors at some point began to use their forepaws as hands and their digits as fingers. So they started manipulating objects, using sticks and tools and so on and so forth. In order to control all that, there was evolutionary pressure for the brain getting larger, more circuits, more sophisticated circuits developing. So we start to do this. As a result, this starts getting larger. But in order to take full advantage of our capacity to use our hands, we have to walk on 2 legs. In order to do so, the pelvis has to get narrower, because you can't walk on 2 legs on the pelvis of a horse. So what we're getting is a larger head and a narrower pelvis. And that means already at birth, those who have given birth will know this, the head is the biggest diameter of the body. If our head was any larger, we wouldn't be born. So we couldn't be born at 11 months or 12 months or 13 months. We simply would not be born. We have to be born prematurely relative to other animals. And that means much of our development has to occur after birth. And that depends very much on the environment now. And it's a rapid period of growth in the first 3 years of life. By the end of the first 3 years, the human head is something like 85% adult size. The body is about 18–19% adult size. There are times in the first year of life when every second in this space of time, a million connections or millions of connections are being made in the brain. So it's a very critical period. Just as the visual circuitry requires the development, for its development, the presence of light waves, so all the circuitry implicated in childhood behavior issues, self-regulation, endorphin, dopamine, etc., they also need the right environment. And the necessary condition for the physiological development of these key brain circuits is the presence of attuned, non-stressed, non-depressed, emotionally available, consistently available parenting caregivers. Anything that interferes with the parent's capacity to be emotionally consistently available, to be non-depressed, to be non-stressed, to be attuned, will interfere with the child's brain development. Now, this is finally getting into the medical literature. I made the same point in my book on ADHD 12, 13 years ago now, because the science had already come in by then. And you know, all those years later, it's still an uphill battle to convince people, doctors, that what they're looking at are developmental problems, not disease problems. That what's actually going on is that kids don't have the right conditions for development. So instead of providing the right conditions, we give them pills. Now, pills may be useful, and I've taken them myself and I've prescribed them, but they do nothing for development. So to quote from this Harvard article of this year, new discoveries in molecular biology and epigenetics are explaining how early adversity, as a result of scarcity, stress, or instability, can lead to physiologic disruptions in the developing brain, the cardiovascular system, and other body organs, as well as behavioral adaptations that have lifelong impacts on learning, behavior, and health. So think about ADHD. When a 1-year-old is stressed, and why is the 1-year-old stressed? Because the parent is stressed.